Okay, when you think of the Declaration of Independence, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For pretty much everyone, it's that giant looping signature right in the center. John Hancock. I mean, his name has literally become another way to say signature. But who was the actual man behind the autograph? Well, as we're about to see, he was way more complex and maybe even a little more conflicted than you probably realize.
And there it is. Just look at that thing. It's bold, it's elegant, and you absolutely cannot miss it. It almost jumps right off the page at you. You can feel the confidence in every curve. Or maybe it's not confidence, maybe it's defiance. It's the signature that really came to symbolize the whole American rebellion.
So that brings us to the big question, right? Why is it so big? We've all heard that one famous story our whole lives, but you gotta wonder, is that really how it went down?
Yeah, that whole story about King George and his spectacles, it's a great line, but it's just a legend. The real reason is a little more practical and, honestly, a little less dramatic. As the president of the Continental Congress, it was his job to sign first. So naturally, his signature went right there in the middle, pride of place. And that amazing fancy script? Well, that was just the mark of a well-educated, high-class gentleman back then. It was a style, literally.
To really get who John Hancock was and what drove him, you just have to follow the money. And I don't mean he was just comfortable. We're talking about one of the absolute wealthiest men in all of colonial America. That fortune shaped every single decision he ever made.
So check this out. This is a map of Boston from 1769. As you can see, it's a crowded, bustling, busy port town. But right there, perched on top of Beacon Hill, you see that letter U? That's Hancock's mansion. It physically towered over the entire city, a constant, visible reminder of his power, looking right down on the harbor that was making him all that money.
Okay, so this isn't a photograph, obviously. It's a needlepoint from the 1750s. But wow, it tells you so much. Just look at how his mansion completely dominates the scene. And there, on horseback, that's a young John Hancock, already being shown as this elegant, privileged figure. He was basically considered Boston royalty before he was even out of his teens.
So where'd all this cash come from? Well, he was adopted by his incredibly rich uncle, and at just 27 years old, he inherited this gigantic business empire that stretched across the Atlantic. But here's the kicker. A huge chunk of his fortune came from lucrative contracts with the British. And yet, at the same time, he was a massive smuggler, dodging British taxes left and right. So get this, he's getting rich from the empire while ripping them off at the same time. Talk about a setup.
And that right there, that's the central conflict of John Hancock's story. With his entire fortune so tangled up with the British Empire, he wasn't exactly jumping at the chance to be a radical revolutionary. He was, in fact, a moderate, a man who got pushed toward revolution by circumstance, not because he was a true believer from the start.
You can really see his whole journey here. It starts with self-interest, right? He protests things like the Stamp Act because they hurt his bottom line. But the real game changer was in 1768. The British seized his ship, the Liberty, for smuggling. The riots that followed basically turned him into an accidental hero for the Patriot cause. And after that, his political career just exploded, taking him all the way to president of the very Congress that would declare independence.
By 1774, he was really leaning into this new public role. In a big speech about the Boston Massacre, he declared his eternal enmity to tyranny. I mean, those are some seriously strong words, especially for a guy who, just a few years earlier, was way more worried about his accounting books.
But not everyone was buying it. That very same year, a critic publicly accused him of putting on a show, saying his passions were just a trick to fool everybody. And this is so important because it shows that even back then, people were wondering, is this guy for real? Is he a true patriot, or is he just a rich dude looking out for number one?
The real answer seems to be that he was a political moderate, and this was his true strength. You know, while radicals like Samuel Adams were pushing for an all-out fight, Hancock was often the guy who would pump the brakes, build consensus, and bring more people into the fold. It was his caution, not his radicalism, that actually made him such an effective and essential leader.
So you take that moderation, you combine it with his charisma and his immense wealth, and you get a guy who is incredibly popular. So popular, in fact, that he earned a nickname that pretty much says it all. King Hancock.
I mean, the man held all the top jobs. President of Congress during the Declaration? Check. First governor of Massachusetts, a job he held for 9 terms, by the way? Check. But his real power came from something more personal. He was a genuine idol. He knew how to connect with ordinary people, using his famous generosity, funding public works, buying drinks for workers, to win their loyalty in a way most other elites just couldn't.
So just how popular are we talking? Try this on for size. In election after election for governor, he would pull in over 80% of the vote. Just think about that for a second. In today's world, a number like that is completely unimaginable. He wasn't just a leader people respected, he was an icon they adored.
This quote from the eulogy at his funeral, man, it really says it all. The Reverend Peter Thatcher said, "The people were so devoted to Hancock, it seemed like they were ready to pluck out their own eyes and give them unto him." What an incredibly intense image, but it just captures the depth of that loyalty.
Okay, so we have this picture of a really complex man. A rich merchant, a reluctant hero, a moderate leader, and a beloved king. But his story has one more incredible twist that brings us right into our world today. Let's not forget what was really at stake here. When John Hancock put that famous signature on that document, he was signing his own death warrant, period. He was officially a traitor to the crown, public enemy number one to the most powerful empire on the planet.
And now, fast forward to today. What do you think of when you hear the name John Hancock? It's probably not rebellion. It's a massive financial services and insurance company, a brand built entirely on the idea of security and trust.
Just look at the words the company uses to describe itself. Honest, reliable, stable, strong. Isn't that wild? The actual man was a smuggler who risked everything he had to overthrow a government. The modern brand represents the very stability he fought against.
And this leaves us with the ultimate irony, doesn't it? How does a nation's foremost trader, a risk-it-all smuggler, become a modern symbol of stability and financial trust? It's a fascinating testament to the strange journey of history, and it proves that the man behind the signature was, and remains, far more complex than we ever imagined.